Dr. Ryan McCorkle's back. Let's hear what he has to say about your silver and black.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Happy beginning of the workday. Happy Monday, everybody. Got that workday week ahead of you, so let's get you through it and get you past those Monday blues. So what are we talking about today? Well, as you heard a little while ago, Dr. Ryan McCorkle's back for his weekly visit. And as of this recording, should we be worried that Romeo Langford is still out? He's dealing with an adductor issue. Doctor, we'll talk to you about that. And also we'll talk about change. Just changes in people's lives. The Spurs had a pair of trades. But what does that mean just for you, for me, for the NBA player when having to readjust to a whole new setting? And Keldon Johnson is playing on a bum ankle. Good or bad. That's going to bring him on. Oh, before we do that, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. Doctor, welcome back to Locked On Spurs. How are you doing?
Hey, Jeff. Doing well. Good to be back with you.
Now, before we hit the record button, everybody, I told Doctor, and he came at a good time, that I'm running low on energy. What's a good jolt? What's a good wake me up? If people who just have those that lack of mojo and just want to get their energy cranking.
Oh man, I think as a human race, we've just kind of all come to agree on caffeine as our default
right.
for getting up. So I mean, people use coffee, and people use caffeine in China for thousands of years as a way to boost their energy. I think it's right now probably the best way to do it is to do it with the lowest sugar option possible. So if you can get your caffeine without a giant pile of whipped cream and sugar on top of it, then that's probably better for your health.
Well, there goes my plan. I was going to get a glass of water with sugar and whipped cream on top of it. So, but he is an ER doc at the St. David's Medical Center and Austin Emergency Center. He's also with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. Follow him on Twitter at Austin ER Doc and on Instagram, Austin EM Doc for some sweet looking kicks. Yeah, we're going to talk about that later on. We got to get the latest update from Doctor on his sneaker collection. But Doctor, let's go to dive into it. I don't want to keep you here too long. I don't want to sound like a beaten, like I'm beating a dead horse here, but as of this recording, Romeo Langford is still out. Now, the last week we spoke, you said, man, not much to do about anything. This is likely par for the course, but he's still dealing with that adductor injury as of this recording, everybody. So don't come at us if he starts playing again, against the Pistons the last week. But is it now time for concern?
Honestly, I think you'll see with a lot of teams that they're not going to push anybody who's on and out with an injury right now to come back before the All-Star break, because it just gives them that extra added few days. So what would be the advantage of coming back and re-injuring it right before you go on to the break? Extend it through the All-Star break and let them come back after the break.
Yeah.
So I would not get concerned. I would say if after the All-Star break we don't see him back, then we could say this is probably a more serious strain or even tear than we have known previously. But I wouldn't get too bad of shape until after the All-Star break.
And just for the listener, in case they didn't tune in last week, but again, what is the issue that Romeo Langford is dealing with, the adductor strain?
So adductors are the muscles in the legs that bring your legs together. So if they were apart, it brings them back to the midline, which anytime that you're in a basketball stance and moving laterally, cutting, you're going to be using those adductors a lot. So an adductor injury for a basketball player is really difficult for all the movements required to play the game. So I can see why an adductor might take a while, or you may want to wait until it's 100% to come back.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, as of this recording, this little segment here is moot because he's back. But if he isn't, then we'll definitely check again with Dr. Ryan if he is still out the next time he makes a visit next week. But speaking of the injury list, ahead of the game versus the Pistons last week, it was reported that Sohan and Trey Jones are starting to get into practice now. They've been questionable, doubtful for a few games. Just a quick recap here. Sohan and Trey Jones have not been playing in the last few games. Right ahead of the Detroit game last week, Trey Jones was listed as questionable with left foot soreness, and Sohan was questionable again with low back soreness. It looks like that ricin treatment may be starting to work now.
Well, you're the expert now on that, Jeff.
I'm the expert. I am the ricin expert.
Absolutely. Jeremy, there could be it could be the fact that he is going to the All-Star. He and Charles Bassey are our representatives
right.
The All-Star weekend. So he's not going to get that rest of the All-Star break. So this may be a way to get him some rest before the All-Star break when he has to go and compete when everybody else is getting the rest.
Right.
Trey being out, they're just being careful with a foot, which is not uncommon. And I guess we could also, consider the trade deadline.
Right.
Being out with an injury is a good way to protect your the people you want to be on the team going forward. If you're not looking for them to be up on the trading block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, hopefully the Spurs will get back to 100%, or maybe not, considering I think they threw in the towel already with this season and are all in on the tank. And it is clear that that's the path they're choosing, whether it be from the trades they made, who they gave up, and what they got to return. A lot of picks. But
a lot of second-round picks, right? Second-round picks are the new.
Yeah. Is that like the gold now? Is that like gold now for just the teams to stockpile second round? I remember back in the day, you remember too, people used to scoff at second round picks. Now apparently they're being coveted, Doctor.
Well, they're definitely the current currency of the realm, aren't they? Just being thrown around like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it may be just to make trades match up.
Right.
I don't think anybody's better than the Spurs at utilizing second round picks, but across the rest of the league, second round picks still just aren't too much, but they're also very low risk.
Well, speaking of trades and changes, and I want to get your thoughts on this, since you sometimes speak on the mental side of things here, changes and people deal with changes. The Spurs just dealt with changes, and specifically Jakob and Josh Richardson. They're moving from San Antonio to Toronto for Poeltl, and then Richardson's going from San Antonio to New Orleans. And we talked about this before, that human beings are creatures of habit. And here's two players that are about to disturb that habit that they formed in San Antonio. Now they got to adjust to something else. And whether it be also for you, me, anybody else, or it be changing addresses, moving from one state to another, a change in diet, change in habits. What is that toll on people when major changes happens to their lives? Hey, I want to talk to you about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, experiences that help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your opening jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond the resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them for free and fast. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all in one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs and number one in delivering quality hires versus competing, leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
I mean, you cannot underestimate that. And we talk about it a lot here because, mental health care is healthcare, and people that work in healthcare have to be able to become more versed in discussing mental health and how it contributes even to my job in emergency medicine. So much of that people come in with various complaints that are really related to their mental health, because it does affect their physical health and manifest in that way. As far as this goes, I mean, these people are going through, I mean, it seems very glamorous to those of us who aren't doing it, but
Right.
it still is a difficult task they're doing, right? If it weren't, everybody would be winning championships or reaching the NBA. It is very difficult what they're doing, and especially with the Spurs, we talked about the mental toll of losing, and the way that you deal with that is the camaraderie and the kinsmanship, or for lack of a better word and for an overused term, the family of all those people going through it with you. And to see some of those people, and especially your better, they're not super veteran compared to the rest of the league, but veteran for the Spurs, seeing your veteran presence go away can take a toll. But I think it's you also are kind of prepared for that. When we see the environment of the Spurs season, we see the trajectory and the way things are going. Of course, you want the best for those people you're going through this with, and you want to see them go on to contenders and to further their career when they're a little bit older. So you expected those veterans to go. All of us expected Jakob to be gone by the trade deadline. Doesn't mean it's easy, but I don't think it was totally unexpected for them. So I think it'll be good for their mental health to be able to have that young core that stays together and know that we're going to go through this together. We're going to go through this process, this losing, this evolution, this growth together, and the hard parts, and that we'll be together to reap those benefits, in the next few years.
Right. Yeah, and perhaps the transition is a lot easier for NBA players. They have a whole company, for lack of a better word, help them move, the stress of moving, like boxing up things and packing things to go. Obviously, they're in a financially different situation, so that helps too. But still, let's just, some NBA players have families and they got to uproot their kids from the school that they've been going to for years. Look at Westbrook, for example, in Los Angeles, and now he and his wife and his kids got to uproot and move to Utah temporarily unless they waive him. What about that? Those other factors in people's lives, the wives, the kids, the husbands, the partners, they have to uproot along with, in this case, an NBA player has to go play in a different city.
Yeah, so I think we can talk about it from both sides of that. I think from the veterans, from the Spurs veterans, but for anybody who's being traded and having to move, moving is one of the most stressful things you can go through. It's stressful on family bonds. It's difficult for kids. They're resilient, but it's still difficult to uproot, leave their friends. The same with the spouses. You're trading a life of relative economic ease for something that can be still very difficult, have a real mental toll of having to move constantly. I think JJ Redick addressed this really well towards the end of his career when he talked about, like, for a while they lived here in Austin, because he was saying, look, I know for the rest of my career I'm going to be a journeyman. So to have this had the least amount of effect on my family and my children, let's live somewhere central where we, it's easy to access both coasts or anywhere in the country, and know we're going to be moving somewhere stable for those kids and for the spouse to be. And when I'm going to be moving around, maybe traded 2, 3, 4, 5 times, we'll have a central base in the middle of the country. So I thought that was a really well thought out strategy, because it is so stressful on families to have to pick up and move all the time with no control over where you're going to be sent or when.
Right. We're talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on Locked On Spurs for his weekly visit as he catches us up with all the Spurs injuries and other sides of the NBA, such as getting traded and being uprooted from Poeltl's case, for example, from San Antonio to Toronto, and how you can deal with life situations like that as well. So for, the casual NBA fan, the 9-to-5ers, you, me, we don't have those type of luxuries, for a major move like that, whether it be financially or, perhaps just somebody single and they don't have a support network to help them in that situation. What's some good advice for somebody just the casual NBA fan to deal with dramatic changes in lives?
Man, being resilient is very difficult, and a lot of times we put that onus on the individual and not give them the resources that they need. I think, it's been productive that we've had more of a discussion of mental health in this country in the last few years, but that people have a support network, whether it be your immediate family, your extended family, or a non-biased therapist. Therapy's become easier to access across all levels of income. It used to be just something for the wealthy, but now it's accessible. And I think a lot of NBA players are taking advantage of that, and a lot of our listeners could too, that having somebody to talk to and doing it regularly is a real way to help from getting deep into a hole when big life changes like a move come about. I think we were talking about the other side. We talked about how it affects people when they get traded. Also, when you talk about the young Spurs there and the mental toll of understanding that this is all, you hear NBA players say all the time, I understand that this is business, this is a part of the business. And it's important to understand that, but it doesn't make it any more difficult to see your teammates, your friends, those people that have become your family go away. And that can really create a sense of instability. And it can be very isolating. And I think you can see that with a lot of NBA players, and it can affect their mental health. You can see it with Kyrie, just that you don't know where you'll be. You don't know who will be here. And it can cause you to become more isolated and introverted, because I'm not going to create these bonds or these connections with these teammates because they're going to be gone,
Right.
Or I'll be gone. And so I don't want that pain, and so I'm not going to create that bond because I don't want that pain.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you figured, I get it. The NBA is a tight community among the players. You hear about this from interviews when so and so gets traded, and days later or months later, when that reunion came, and they'll say, "No, we've kept in touch." So you hear that a lot, and I think, like you mentioned, that's another reflection on just the casual fan or the non-NBA player like you and me, just staying in touch. I think the technology helps in that aspect, especially nowadays. If anything that came from the pandemic, Doctor, is how technology can really keep people together.
Nothing more isolating than those two and a half years of the pandemic. And so finding ways to overcome that isolation was definitely a challenge, and something that we all, found our own ways to deal with.
Right,
That's a very good point. I think also you may want to point out here that something the Spurs do exceptionally well, and Popovich in particular, is you don't see a lot of people go on to other organizations and come back and have such a joyous reunion, such a bond formed with a coach and an organization, as you do with all these players who come back on other teams, and still you can see that sincere bond that they have with Popovich. That takes a lot of effort as a coach.
Absolutely.
And it does benefit him directly, but it also says a lot about him as a human, that he's putting himself out there, creating these bonds, knowing that a lot of these players are gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And then even the fans, especially fans in San Antonio, they get so attached to players. Yeah, I think a good example is when the Spurs traded George Hill to Indiana to get the 15th pick, which turned into Kawhi, and then afterwards, I believe it was Pop. It was either Pop or Buford, but I recall correctly, it was Pop, like nearly in tears that they had to trade him, George Hill, because he was a favorite of Popovich. Even when Duncan retired, Popovich spoke about it and was in tears. Manu Ginobili, you hear fans said that, when he retires and it makes his retirement, speech, it's going to be brutal on me. It might break down. Again, a change. Pop lost the greatest player ever in a Spurs uniform due to retirement. Pop had to make a bad decision and cause change in George Hill's life and lose him in order to get Kawhi Leonard. So it really impacts people on the emotional level, and it comes out, Doctor. The midway point of the NBA season is here. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sports app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Look, you could build your favorite NBA bets of the week. They can include anything you can think about, whether it be rebounds, player points, assists, etc. There's so many exclusive bets, like the 2x3, 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. Yeah, check out those bets as well. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same game parlay. So don't miss out the chance to get your first no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment count more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
It does. It does. And
Yeah.
two things. I think, first of all, I really feel proud and good about the Spurs fans, their evolution that we've come to. About, if you remember when you and I were growing up in the 80s and 90s, your player from your team got traded, and it was almost like they had or left in free agency even, and it was like a betrayal. We don't like that.
I remember that. Yeah.
Us and them, and we've evolved so much on that, and realized that this is a business, and that both ways. The player has to do what's best for themselves because the organization is going to do what's best for the organization, and players are going to come and go. And we have a bond with that human, not just with what laundry they're wearing. And so we've become a whole lot better about being appreciative of those players when they come back through. I think even better than a lot of other fan bases, but a lot of fans have come to that realization. This is just a part of the way the sport works, and we can still appreciate those athletes and those humans for the joy they brought to our lives, and not be resentful when they move on to other places. The second thing I want to say was a big thing about Pop. Of course, those things were emotional and difficult when those players left, and him showing that emotion was a beautiful thing. I think even more difficult and speaks more to his character and the organization's character is a situation like Boban, where he had an offer. I think it was the Pistons offering him a whole lot more money than the Spurs had under the cap to offer him. He was like, but I love it here. I love Pop. I want to stay. And Pop sitting down with him and saying, this is generational money that can affect your family going forward. And being able to have that level of awareness that this may not be this would be better for our team. This would be better for me. But I'm thinking about what's better for you and your family and you going forward, and telling you to do what is painful for me and painful for you, but best for you in the long term. And that's like being a parent. That takes a lot of character.
Yeah, I had something, obviously not generational money, anything like that, but I had something very similar, like Popovich and Boban had with my time here now at Kens 5. I was with the one of the competitors in San Antonio, Sinclair News 4, for a long time. And, I remember when Kens came knocking on my door, and I spoke to my former manager at News 4, bracing for the worst. Man, he's going to get mad. He's going to be upset. Because I call him my mentor. Like, he was the guy that really, really believed in me and took a big risk, and I'm thankful for that. But I'm bracing myself, and his first reaction was like, "Well, what are you waiting for? They're giving you more money than we can. See ya," but in an encouraging way, in a very encouraging way. So, and then the only thing he said, he goes, "I'll always be here." He goes, "But that type of money bump you're gonna get, you definitely, you got to go, so been there.
Those are rare people to find in your life, and jewels to have in your life, of people that will say you should do this even though it's not what I want, and it might be a little bit painful. It's best for you, and I care about what's best for you. Those are the people that keep around you.
Yeah, and then he was so grateful. He said, "Hey, look, if something bad happens, at your new home, you always have a home here. So, just to leave that door open, I think that's awesome." But yeah, changes. The Spurs go through it. The fans are going through it right now. Poeltl was a fan favorite. Josh Richardson was like a quick fan favorite, but you see everywhere they're wishing them well, and you'll see him down the road. Poeltl's going to get his, thank you video tribute next season. Richardson probably will, maybe the season. I think the Pelicans and Spurs will still play a couple more times, so you'll likely see that. So just to show the appreciation. But yeah, Doctor, before we transition to our next topic, any helpful websites people could go to having to deal with life altering changes? They can just look up or call off numbers you can think off the top of your head.
There are there's obviously the national suicide hotlines that are very important if someone gets into a really difficult spot with their mental health. As far as resources for just dealing with anxiety, depression, and difficulties of day to day, I don't want to endorse any one outlet over another, but there are tons. If you I know where I work, both places where I work, they send us a particular group that they're working with that gets you low cost or covered by your insurance teletherapy. So I think that's the whole point, is finding these teletherapy things that decrease the barrier. The cost has come down whether you have insurance or not, to where it's reasonable and affordable for most everybody. Not everybody, but most everybody. And they can access it, and then it's convenient. They don't have to leave their home. Any barrier you can take down to seeking out that help. So just being able to get on your phone and FaceTime someone who is impartial, who is trained and can help you through those difficult spots. All you got to do is a Google search. Like I said, I don't want to endorse one commercial enterprise over another, but it'll cost you less than $100. You'll be able to schedule it, and you'll be able to do it on your phone, all at your convenience. And so I want people to know that there is help out there. It's easy to get to, easy to access, and affordable if you need it.
He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle, an ER doc at the St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center, and also with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine practice. Before we wrap up here, we got to talk about Keldon Johnson. Now, during this recording, the Spurs did announce that Keldon Johnson will be held out of the game versus last week game versus the Pistons. We're going to talk about this because heading into that Pistons game, he was just questionable, but he did openly admit in the previous game, I think it was against Chicago, or I think it was the first game of the road trip. The point is that heading into that Detroit game, he had said that, I have a bum ankle. I am not 100%, but I am still out there and I'm grinding through it. So it looks like the Spurs had made the decision prior to the Detroit to sit him out. But when you hear stuff like that, Doctor, like players, I'm not 100%, but I'm still going to go, on an ankle, no less. What are your thoughts? Should the Spurs have maybe sat him out if he was voicing this concern, even if he's throwing a hissy fit, and just sit him down? What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't say that they've done the wrong thing at all, but I think that's why you're seeing him sit out now, because obviously with this season being what it is, there's no reason to push anybody who's got a physical ailment. If you're hurting, there's no reason to push your way through it for a victory. It's part of the process. You want that core together and playing together. So you don't want everybody out anytime that they have a hangnail. But, I think you're seeing him sit because he's been pushing through. And now that he's let them know, hey, I am hurting. It is hampering my performance. Like, what's the point of that? Let's let him sit a couple of games and maybe, so he can rest from now through the All-Star break. And get some relief.
Yeah, and you could, I'm pretty sure the doctor staff were monitoring him and watching him and talking with him, but sometimes players do lie. They do. I mean, Popovich has mentioned stories about how Ginobili would flat out say, "I'm fine," and then what's he doing? He's playing on a busted arm or this, and you can only go so much with the players nowadays. That was back early 2000s, late 90s. Nowadays, I think the teams just rely on doctors a lot more so than maybe than the players But good thing for the Spurs did sit him out. Okay, that's good. And plus, too, Doctor, it was against the Pistons. If you catch my drift,
I do.
It tied, at least heading into that game, tied for the second worst record. We probably saw, by the time you listen to this recording, everybody, you probably saw the greatest worst game ever. Does that make sense to everybody? Because they know what the assignment is. They know to get that percentage point up to get a Wembanyama or a Scoot. So I obviously this is recorded before the Detroit game, Doctor, but I'm pretty sure we saw maybe a game of hot potato with a lot of turns. Like, oops, I accidentally turned the ball over. Oh, darn wide shots going wide left, whatnot. But yeah, but get this, heading into that Pistons game last week, and tell me, Doctor, this doesn't scream, but the T word. So Bassie was going to be available heading into that Pistons game, but then they said, nah, you got to go to the G League. So Bassie's going to the G League. Now, this is probably okay. The newest member of the Spurs, Kem Birch, he's out, ineligible to play. That's probably just some more paperwork there. Okay, fine. But then Keldon Johnson, as we mentioned, is out versus that Pistons game. Trey Jones was questionable, out. Langford was questionable, out. Sohan was questionable, out. Devin Vassell, well, we know his situation, out. So may the worst team win.
If we could send the G League team there to play the game, we would. They won't let us do that. So
yeah. So, Doctor, I mean, we think the Spurs are like, we forgot it's the Pistons. Right. Dr. McCorkle, Jeff, y'all want to play? We've got a uniform for y'all. I'm pretty sure we're gonna get that email. But Doctor, any sneaker updates? Anything new in your closet? I know you're drooling over the new John Morant. What do you got?
I'm still. I love that Galaxy Luka 1 colorway. Eventually, it'll probably take me 6 months or so. I want to see all the colorways that come out this season for the Luka 1 and the Ja 1. I think I'll probably get one of each of them towards the end of the season. But the ones that I just pulled the trigger on, I got the new Travis Scott Olive lows coming because it's a black and green colorway, and I'm going to change the swoosh, the green suede swoosh to a Austin FC lighter colored green to wear it for the games this year. So I've got the sneaker on the way, and then I'm going to do the painting when it gets here. And then I got the Air Jordan 1 OG Starfish coming as well, which is a burnt orange brown colorway that came out earlier this year. And then going to put some Longhorns on the back quarter panel to wear this year as well. And then the big one that'll be interesting for the listeners is I got a pair of the Travis Scott Phantoms, the all black low colorway. And I'm going to take the swoosh and make it silver and then put Spurs on the back quarter panels of those for some for a Spurs custom colorway to wear to the games as well. Awesome.
Look at that. Yep. And again, go to Austin EM Doc on Dr. Ryan's Instagram to see all his collection and then some. But we're done talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about Romeo Langford? If he's still out by the time we're recording, are you a little nervous? Are you kind of like, okay, what's going on here? Or you kind of understand what the Spurs are doing? Like, oh no, Romeo, you got that hangnail. Gotta sit out. And what do you think about changes? Just changes in your life when you see your favorite player, whether it had been Poeltl or Josh Richardson, move on. How did that impact you? And of course, your thoughts on Keldon Johnson, at least sitting out against the Pistons game. But then again, if you're on Team Tank, we know what you think about that. You can let Doctor know on Twitter at AustinERDoc. And what's going on with Backstage?
Well, we just talked about FC and UT. I've been working a lot on getting all the docs scheduled for those games. We have those shows we talked about coming up. Bruce Springsteen will be here on the 16th, and Margot Price just came through, and we have a ton coming up with South by Southwest and Willie Nelson's Luck Reunion on the second weekend in March. So during South by, it is just madness with all the musicians here and a lot of them needing a doc for their voice or for some IV hydration and that kind of thing. So we're getting prepared and geared up for the South by season and a lot of concerts coming back after the pandemic. So a ton of tours coming through Austin over the next couple of months.
That's just really silly. I've gone to Walgreens. CVS's, what have you. And I see these cans of oxygen. Have you seen these things?
There's a can of oxygen?
Yes, they're now selling cans of oxygen, just like you saw in Spaceballs, the movie. Remember Perrier? Like, think of that, but like in a kind of an arrow, like a hairspray can. And I thought it was like a gag. No, it's legit. I got to send you pictures of this. But I guess they're trying to, who created that is trying to go the route of bottled water. Maybe that's like, well, the next best thing's gonna be bottled air. I'll send you a photo of it. It's baffling.
Man.
Yeah.
We are trying to we're trying to sell people anything we can now.
Exactly. But I figure as a doctor, you probably would have seen that. Obviously, you haven't seen it, and you probably laughed.
But honestly, a lot of what we do is bring oxygen tanks even to a lot of these music venues because a lot of the musicians like to have oxygen right before and after they go on stage, and the placebo effect is real, and if it makes people feel better and there's no harm to it, then okay. I don't think you want to pay for oxygen in a can, because honestly, if your lungs are working correctly, there's no reason why you need supplemental oxygen. Won't do anything for you.
Right.
As long as your lungs are functioning, the oxygen you can harvest from the atmosphere, supplemental oxygen is not going to do anything for you.
Right.
So, but if it makes people feel better and they get something out of it, I just, if you ask me my medical opinion, is there medical evidence that this is actually physiologically going to do something for you? Then the honest answer is no. But again, if it's low cost and it makes your brain feel better and you feel physically better, it doesn't do any harm, have at it.
Exactly. Have at it. And I've been tempted to try one. I just want to know what the experience is like. I'm just so curious. But anyway, we're done talking. Like I said, Dr. Toja, you can get a hold of him. And again, we want to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, the Kins 5 Plus app. And check out Locked On Game to Game. Make that your second listen. Locked On Game to Game NBA covers all the games, all the stats, all the recaps, everything you need. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcast. So for Dr. Ryan McCorkle, I am Jeff Garcia. We're putting a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.